record button. And my name is Lindsay Caldflesh. I'm a knowledge broker at Gambling Research Exchange Ontario, and I just want to thank you all for joining us in this webinar today. As you may already have noticed, your mics are muted and were automatically muted when you entered the web center. During Andrew's presentation, we're going to keep the mics muted. I'd ask that you try to save your questions for a 15-minute question period at the end of the presentation, but if you do have any burning questions during the presentation, feel free to send me a chat or through the question and answer section, and then I can moderate those questions as we go. During the question period at the end, in the final 15 minutes, there's a function through WebEx where you can raise your hand virtually and I can unmute your mic, and that's what we will do for you to be able to sort of verbally ask and answer or speak with Andrew. And if you're having trouble finding that, again, please just send me a chat and I can ask a question on your behalf. The webinar is going to be recorded in full and we will post it on our site and on our YouTube channel. So if you miss pieces or if you want to refer back, we'll all be there. Andrew has also offered to share his email address with you, so I will send that out following the event, and I'm sure that he would be willing to send his slides along as well, though he has mentioned that his slides tend to be more photo heavy and most of the content will come from the way he speaks in his slides. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Andrew. He is a PhD candidate in clinical psychology at the University of Calgary in Calgary, Alberta. His research focuses on developing transdiagnostic treatments for addictions and impulse control disorders, examining transdiagnostic mechanisms of comorbid substance use and mental health disorders, as well as examining novel facilitators of treatment seeking. He also examines the relationship between social casino games and future gambling behaviors and the viability of using online recruitment for research. Andrew Kim has published over 30 peer-reviewed journal articles and has been an invited speaker at national and international conferences. Kim's research has been funded by the National Council on Responsible Gambling, Gambling Research Exchange Ontario, and the Alberta Gambling Research Institute. Kim holds a Canada Graduate Scholarship from the Social Sciences and Humanities Council of Canada, a doctoral scholarship from the Alberta Gambling Research Institute, a graduate studentship from the Alberta Innovate Health Solutions, and is a Killam laureate. He has also helped to establish an international addictions and impulse control disorders network with the University of Sao Paulo. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Andrew and he will make his presentation for you. Go ahead, Andrew.
Thank you, Lindsay, for that introduction, and thank you everyone for joining me during your lunchtime in this presentation. I hope it is informative. And if anyone would like any of the papers that I mentioned in this presentation, please feel free to email me. I've listed my email here. It will also be listed at the end of the presentation, and I'd be more than happy to send you along any copies or answer any questions you may have. So before we begin, just a disclosure of conflict of interest. The research I'll be presenting was primarily funded by the Ontario Problem Gambling Research Centre, which is now the Gambling Research Exchange Ontario, and the Alberta Gambling Research Institute. I would also like to take this moment to acknowledge my collaborators, Dr. Michael Wall at Carleton University, Samantha Hollingshead, Melissa, who I think is actually listening in this webinar, Dr. Rina Gupta at Queen's, and Dr. Jeffrey Dervitsky, who have all contributed to the studies that I will be sharing with you. Okay, so the outline for today's webinar, I'm just briefly talking about the relationship between social media and gambling, then going to define what are social casino games, who are the social casino gamers, so who plays these free-to-play games on Facebook, so what is the social casino game gambling link, just going to talk about a few studies that talk about how these games may increase gambling behaviors and how sometimes they may decrease gambling behaviors. Then briefly touch about who pays for these free credits, because that'll be, as we go along, you'll see that's quite an important predictor of who increases their gambling, and then implications and future directions. All right, so technology has always profoundly affected how we engage in gambling activities. Long gone are these simple slot machines with 1 arms and 3 reels. These used to be called one-armed bandits. Today's gambling activities, however, look and feel like high-tech video games with graphics, videos, and high-tech sounds. As you can see here, now you can actually bet on multiple lines and with multiple amounts at a quicker rate than ever before. And instead of pulling a lever, you push a button. So it really increases the rate of play and can become more addictive. A recent technological advance that has a profound impact on the way we engage in gambling is social media sites such as Facebook. And this is in part due to the sheer number of people who use social networking sites. For example, as of January 2016, we have 7.4 billion people on Earth. 3.4, about half, use the internet, and about 1/3 are active social media users. So that's a huge number of the world's population that are actually using these sites. And if we look at the demographics, or essentially the where people are using them, it's actually highly concentrated in North America, or at least we have the most amount of people using social media sites, around 60%, followed by Europe, Asia, and Oceania. Contrary to popular belief, Facebook is still actually the most popular social networking site with about 1.6 million monthly active users. The next three are actually messenger sites, and Qzone is a social networking site that's popular in China. But as you can see here, Facebook predominates in terms of sheer number of people who use them, and which is one of the reasons why I'll be focusing a bit of the presentation on Facebook. To put this further into perspective, if we compare Facebook, think of it as a country, it would be the world's most populous country with more people than China and India. And while Facebook and other social media sites were created with the intention of helping people stay in touch with their family and friends, it has increasingly become a hub for people to engaging in gambling and gaming activities. And I'm pretty sure many of you are familiar with the games that are listed here. So the top left would be Candy Crush, the middle I believe is Farmville, and the right is Clash of Clans. The games below are actually social casino games. And so here I'm going to make a distinction between what are social games, and those are the ones you see above, and these are games that are found on Facebook or other social networking sites where the core activity is not the simulation of gambling games, whereas at the bottom, the social casino games are. So, as I mentioned, the social casino games are defined as games found on social networking sites where the core gameplay is simulation of gambling activities. And this is what I'm going to focus the presentation on today, and not really talk about the social games. And that's a distinction that I really wanted to highlight here. So these social casino games operate on a freemium model. Essentially, what that means is that they're really free to start play, but you can also buy credits to get some premium features, like betting on more lines or maybe having the chance to win more bonus items. But essentially, anyone can just sign up and you can start playing right away. Here, no real money is wagered and players cannot cash out. And I put an asterisk here because while players cannot cash out, My Vegas Spot, which is becoming quite popular, allows people to actually trade in credits for rewards. And it's become pretty popular. As you can see, you can trade your credit things for like buffet pass. There's room discounts. I've seen things like a helicopter trip from Vegas to the Grand Canyon. And so this has become a really popular way for people to try to get that free comps. And for the casinos, it is a way to get people to Vegas or get them to visit their land-based casino as well. So they can be played on multiple platforms. You can play them on your PCs, phones, and tablets. And the majority, as not surprisingly, play them on mobile devices. 26% report playing just solely on their computers or laptops, and around 40% play on both. And the social casino games actually look and sound like gambling activities. And I have a video clip for you that I'm just going to briefly play to show what this might look like. So that's just a quick demonstration of a social slot casino game. And as you can see, this really looks like a slot machine. And gamblers in treatment have said that it's sometimes really difficult to differentiate when they're playing social casino games and when they're actually engaged in gambling activities. But there are a few sort of telltale signs that this is a social casino game. One of the things you can see here says buy coins, so that's where you can engage in what are called microtransactions. And if you saw in the beginning, you can sort of link it back to your Facebook account right here. But other than that, sort of the look and sound, the game mechanics really simulate slot machines. However, the game mechanics are not, or the algorithms are not based on mathematics or random odds. Instead, they're based on what is called a dynamic game balancing. So essentially, the goal of this is to increase player enjoyment. And part of that is allowing players to win more than they would if they were actually engaging in a gambling game. And these social casino games, while not as popular as the social games, still boast an impressive amount of players. So here we have Texas Hold'em, and that has 1 million active daily users. And if we look at the other type of games as well, Texas Hold'em, 5 million active monthly users, 1 million daily, weekly, 1 million weekly and daily active users. Slotomania, about 1 million across the board. And so if you look at the popularity of these games, it's about 5 out of the top 20 games on Facebook are social casino games. So they're immensely popular. And slots, on average, are the more popular games, with about 30% of social casino gamers engaging in slots, followed by poker around 20%. Then we have bingo around 15%, and roulette around 10%. So slot machine for social casino games still tends to predominate. If we aggregate the average number of social casino players, it's about 172 million, and this was in 2013. I wouldn't be surprised if this has surpassed 200 million. I've seen some estimates that there are about 200 million social casino gamers, which is, if you want to compare that to the number of online gamblers, it's about 4 in 1. So there's 4 times more social casino gamers than there are online gamblers. So it's a huge market. And if we look at who are playing social casino games, and this might surprise you, the average social casino gamer is a 40-year-old middle-class woman. Women, in fact, make up over 2/3 of social casino gamers. That said, social casino games seem to be popular across all stages of life, including adolescents and young adults. So given the amount of social casino gamers, it's not surprising that this is a billion-dollar industry. As it stands, the social casino gaming market is worth over $4 billion. So it's quite a bit of money. It's a lucrative market. And in fact, it's about 4% of the worldwide gambling revenues. If you're to look at social casino games as gambling, it's a decent chunk of the pie. And noticing the potential for not only the ability to generate revenue, but also to attract new customers, gambling companies have begun merging or purchasing social casino games. So IGT, which is the world's largest slot machine maker, purchased Double Down Casino for $500 million. Bwin Online Sports Betting merged with Zynga. And Caesars purchased Playtika for $90 million when it was actually losing money. So they're in the red, but they noticed that this is a huge potential, not only to generate revenue, but maybe to attract social casino gamers to their actual gambling platform. And this sort of thing is still ongoing. Caesars actually sold Playtika. So if you see here, they purchased for $90 million. They sold it for $4.4 billion last year to a group of Chinese investors. So they can see that it made them a huge profit. Huge Games, which is a new social casino operator on the market, just raised $50 million in the last round of funding. And this was a news article a couple of days ago. So as you can see, the social casino gaming market is still quite strong and relevant. So the big question is, what is the issue? Given that social casino games, you don't really wager money, so you're not really betting anything of value, you can kind of assume that it is sort of a benign form of activity, right? It's sort of an entertainment. You're playing a game, and rather than building up an army, you're just playing slot machines or poker for fun. So why are regulators, researchers, academics, and clinicians sort of interested in social casino games? And it's because of this. And this is a quote from one of the focus groups that we ran that I'll be talking about. And one of the members said, "I didn't understand how I got from one place to another place, from playing for fun to being in trouble," which speaks to that there might be this potential migration happening where people are moving from social casino gaming to online gambling. And that has gotten people kind of concerned, especially because social casino games are not regulated to the degree that gambling games are. Given the definition, they fall more under the video game category than they do gambling. So here are some preliminary data suggesting that social casino games may significantly increase future gambling behaviors. In a study by Sally Gainsbury, she found that social casino gaming was associated with gambling and gambling problems, so not just increasing gambling, but the harms that may result from gambling problems. 13% of gamblers also engage in social casino games. So you see that this is sort of a cross-migration is happening, that social casino gamers engage in gambling, whereas gamblers also engage in social casino games. And among the social casino gamers, 68% express an interest in gambling activities. And the graph bar here kind of shows how many social casino gamers visit land-based casinos. And it's about half, 50% of social casino gamers also go to land-based casinos. So given that this potential migration occurs, one of the first studies we did was a focus group because this is still a relatively new area. It's growing exponentially fast, but we still don't know much about it. So we thought, why not start from bottom up and just have a conversation or group with social media users who may be exposed to these games and really try to assess, according to their perspective, do they see a link? And if so, what are some of the factors that may lead people to go from social casino games to online gambling? We ran two groups essentially, one with social media users and one with online gamblers. So two different groups to really try to tease this relationship apart. The total was 51 university students, 30 of them were social media users, and 21 were online gamblers. All the focus groups were run by a licensed clinical psychologist. They lasted about 60 to 75 minutes, and they were recorded. So what did we find? Well, the biggest theme that came up, and what's important to note that we weren't really trying to highlight these social casino games. We first wanted to just get a general impression, and even without us prompting them to have a discussion around the social casino games, it was brought up relatively quickly and pretty frequently. And you can see for social media users, it was the most common theme. Then we have things like loss of control and a vulnerable population when you talk about adolescents and emerging adults. With online gamblers, again, play for social media, sort of the social casino games, were an important theme. It wasn't the most frequent theme came up, which is loss of control related to online gambling. But you can see it was still kind of a pervasive activity among online gamblers as well. So what are some of the themes that came up with the focus groups? One of the things that were quite clear was that social casino games were seen as a training ground. It was a way to, especially with poker, to kind of practice your skills, to learn how to play the game without any sort of cost before going to pay sites. So Facebook is just a place to learn how to gamble. My friends started playing on Facebook to learn, and now they're playing on PokerStars. It starts on Facebook. It's a natural progression to start from social casino games. You train, learn, then you realize you're not learning enough because people are not taking the game seriously, and then you move on to paying. So you really get the sense that, this is a place to just, especially if you've never played before, to kind of get the hang of the game, especially where you're not losing kind of any money. And then if you find that you're good at this game, then you move on to the pay sites. Which brings us to perception of skill, which was another common theme that was highlighted. Participants mentioned that if you play for free, then you want to try it. And if you discover that you're good enough at it, then why not just put some money and you might win for real? Once you play for fun, they sort of get people into the gambling. You think, okay, this would be great if it's for real money, so you try it. And you can see why this could be alarming for a lot of people, especially given that these social casino games are not based on algorithms, but really are designed to at the beginning to have people win more than they normally would, to try to up that enjoyment of the game. However, though, not everyone thought there was a link about social casino games to online gambling. And if there was, it was more based on the individual's personality rather than anything to do with the games itself. So one of the quotes, it depends on the person. Some people are more competitive and are more likely to want to step up, but some people are just happy playing for fun. You start playing poker with friends and like you move from that step onto other things. I don't think you go from Facebook to gambling. I don't see that as a gateway at all. So here you're kind of seeing that sort of that mixed bag, right? Where some of the focus group members were definitely highlighting a link that, you know, this really exists. I know people that started with these free to play Facebook games and then move on to online gambling. And some of the focus members or the online gamblers have said, that's exactly how I started myself. I played PokerStars or I played Zynga Poker and then moved on to PokerStars. Whereas with other people, they really don't see that link existing at all. So one of the second study that we did was to actually assess this. Is there a link? Do people actually go from social casino games to online gambling? And if so, what are some of the predictors? Who and why do people move on from playing for fun to paying to play? And some of the things that we looked at with the predictors of why might migration occur, one of the first things we looked at was normalization. These, as I mentioned before, these games are immensely popular, and it's hard not to log into Facebook and see an advertisement for a social casino game on the right-hand bar or even on your newsfeed with people inviting you to play or people posting their score. And social casino gaming ads have increasingly gone up. This is social gaming in general, but social casino gaming ads are also increasing. And if we lump the social games together, in 2011, it was around $300 million. And they're not just advertising on media sites, but they've also gone to TV as well. And this is an advertisement from the huge casino, the one that I mentioned just got $50 million in the recent round of funding. So I'm just going to play that clip for you. Okay, so you see that advertisement there, and you see that it's not focused on you can win a jackpot, but they really highlight that social aspect of it and that competition, that leaderboard, so you can post a high score on your Facebook, and you have bragging rights over all your friends, and this is the freemium model, where you can just start for free with 10 million chips. And this seems to be working. How players hear about new social casino games, 53% social networking ads. They still predominate in terms of how these players are sort of hearing about them and trying them out. 44% friends and family, and 43% with in-app ads. And this is sort of an example of some of that leaderboard, right? You have Peppermint Kisses with almost 400 million chips, and you can submit your scores on Facebook, and this will be posted to your newsfeed or to other players of the same game or to your friends and family as well. So that really highlights that competitive bragging aspect of social casino games. So the next thing we thought about might influence the migration are the distorted perception of skill and odds. So as I mentioned before, these games are not based on algorithms, but really on this sort of model that tries to increase player enjoyment. Second part was enhancement. We thought, you know, winning large amounts of credits in the beginning can be fun, but at a certain point, you might then feel like this isn't exciting enough, that you might then need to maybe wager money. You know that gambling can develop intolerance, where people at first might be excited to win $5, but then they need to win 20 and 30, and they risk more and more and more. So we thought social casino games might be a sort of a step below that. You risk nothing, you win a lot of credits, it's exciting, but then maybe you need to risk $1 or $2 to sort of kind of get that same excitement as before. And third, we thought it might be, or fourth, we thought it'd be microtransactions. Essentially, what are microtransactions? I've highlighted this little area here is where you can buy chips. So while they are free to play to start, players have the option to pay real money for virtual chips, and they make this quite easy. Click of a button, and you can get extra chips or extra features. And you can see how that could be alluring to some people who are perhaps maybe competitive, right? They want to get on top of the leaderboard, and one way to do that is to just buy more chips and to get those extra features, like being able to bet more or have a chance at a higher bonus. And I actually kind of like this because where else do I get to talk about South Park in a talk? And they had a really great episode about the social games. And they talked about this freemium model just being they're not really free. And they highlight that mium, which essentially is a play on word on premium games. So while they're free to play, you pay to get that premium content. So you switch your fake money for real money, and this becomes sort of a cycle where this virtual credits can now take on a value of something that's more tangible than just numbers on a screen. And if we look at how many people actually engage in microtransactions, this is the PC conversion. So it's not a huge amount. It's around 1 to 2%, sometimes around as high as 5% of social casino gamers will actually pay for these credits. Although I have seen numbers as high as 40% of social casino gamers engaging in microtransactions. But roughly you can think about 2 to 5% of all social casino gamers will purchase virtual credits for real money. And the average amount that they spend is roughly around $30, $30 to $40. And as you can see here, it depends on the type of games that they're playing. Here was a CNBC sort of news article or news segment on the microtransaction phenomenon. And here we have the average spend for iTunes Buyer in 6 months. Game of War was around $400. Big Fish Casino was $426. And this is quite high because if you look at here, we have the median, mean, and highest spender. So the median is around $27, so roughly around that $30 mark that people spend buying virtual credits. The mean is $426. But we had someone in 6 months spend $22,000 buying virtual credits. Now, I cannot speak for their income, but spending $22,000 on virtual credits on a social casino game is likely going to result in impairments and harms. So then this takes us to our second study that looked at this migration, if it occurs and what are the predictors. It was a longitudinal 6-month study. We recruited 410 community social casino gamers who have never gambled online. And we focused here on online gambling because the migration, the concern here is going from social casino games to online gambling just because it's so easy. You can do that with the click of a button, and a lot of the social casino gaming advertisements are for online gambling sites. So we thought if the migration occurs, it is likely going from social casino games to online gambling. And some of the predictors we looked at were time spent, so that was our normalization, skill building that came up, that perception of skill, enhancement, so perhaps you might then want to bet a couple more dollars to get that same sort of thrill, and microtransactions. So when we follow them up, we had about 100 responses that completed the 6-month follow-up, and 26, roughly a quarter of our sample reported, yes, within the last 6 months, I have engaged in online gambling. So 1/4, a significant number of people reported migrating from social casino games to online gambling. If we kind of look at some of the descriptive characteristics, we had 17 males, 9 females, predominantly Caucasian, and I should note that's because the sample was around 80 to 90% Caucasian. So this isn't surprising that most of the sample here were Caucasians as well. Mostly employed, mostly in a relationship, and 19 have gambled in the past, not online, and 6 actually have never gambled before. And if we look at predictors of migration, we only have one, and that's microtransactions. And what that number, the 8.16, means is that social casino gamers who reported having engaged in microtransactions when we first asked them, were 8 times more likely than to have reported engaging in online gambling at time 2. So it really seems to be driving this migration from social casino games to online gambling for people who buy these virtual credits. And when we looked at whether this still holds true for people that have never gambled, it does. And the odds ratio is around 5. So it's about 5 times more likely if you've never gambled before to then have engaged in, if you engage in microtransactions, you're 5 times more likely to have tried online gambling. So this brings us to the question then, who makes microtransactions? Who are these people that are actually buying these free credits? And it's no surprise here, they're essentially reflect or look like gamblers. So they gamble more in the past 3 months, 3.53 on the problem gambling severity index, which would correspond with the moderate gambler. But some of the interesting findings we have here is that they're also more impulsive and the reward sensitivity, meaning they attach value, or they actually attach some sort of real reward to the virtual credits. And people that do that are then more likely to make microtransactions. And when we looked at sort of why people engage in microtransactions, 130 to extend play. And so while these games are free to play, if you exhaust all your credits, you can either wait a predetermined amount of time, which is around 24 hours for your credits to be reloaded, or you can just pay right now and just start playing again. And that was the predominant answer. 58 access more features, 49 reported chasing, so that they've lost these virtual credits, so they wanted to buy more to sort of get them back. And you can see where this might be where people are attaching real tangible value to these virtual credits, and then speeding up play so they can bet more or they can just engage in more lines. So I've talked about essentially the relationship between social casino games and increasing gambling, and now I'm going to switch focus to, is there a bright side of social casino games, or can we use these maybe as a harm reduction strategy? And some of this evidence comes from earlier work by Sally Gainsbury, who looked at the influence of social casino games on gambling. And so the minority actually say, about 20% say that social casino games influence their gambling activity. And if we break this down, the 101, into how it influences it, we have 44.5% saying it increases, but then we have this 10% saying it decreases their gambling activity, and the rest saying it sometimes increases, sometimes decreases. So for some, playing the social casino games might have a sort of a harm reduction utility to them. And similar to non-alcoholic beverages or e-cigarettes, perhaps social casino gaming can be used as a way for people to regulate their gambling behaviors, right? It could be much more of a harm reduction strategy to play for free credits rather than to engage with real money, and some of that reverse migration, and the positive impact that it might lessen their urge to gamble. And this is a study that we sort of tested this out. It was a cross-sectional study. Essentially, we asked people, social casino gamers, what happens to their social casino gaming what happens to their gambling when they engage in social casino games, and again, some of that predictors of what may influence when people increase their gambling and what may influence when people decrease their gambling. So we had 271 gamblers who also engage in social casino games, and 140, roughly half the sample, were moderate to sort of gamblers. Our measures motives, so why people engage in social casino games. This was adapted from the Stewart and Zach alcohol motives questionnaire, drinking motives questionnaire, and the census assesses things like enhancement, coping, social, etc. Then we have things unique to social casino games, like skill building and that urge reduction. And then we assess, does your gambling increase or decrease from a -3 to a +3 scale? -3 meaning that after playing social casino games, my gambling decreases, 3 meaning after playing social casino games, my gambling increases, and 0, that doesn't really have an effect on my gambling. So what did we find with the results? Well, interestingly, coping motives, so people who play social casino games to escape negative affect, there was really no relationship in their future gambling behaviors. We thought this might be a way to decrease your gambling. We know that gambling can be a way people use to escape, and if these social casino games look and feel like gambling games, then perhaps this could be one way that people sort of use it to escape, but it doesn't seem to be the case. Enhancement, again, doesn't seem to really be an effect there. So people don't really migrate to online gambling because they need more excitement and more thrill that they would get if they were to bet for real money. Social motives, we see an increase. So people who report engaging in social casino games to sort of increase their social networks or have that social activity seems to increase. And we thought this might be the case that, while social casino games are advertised as being these social activities, they're really not. You play by yourself, so for these people, they may then go play poker with their friends or may go to a casino where they're surrounded by other people. Not surprising here, skill building. People who report that I play social casino games to practice, to get better at them, are more likely than to report that after playing these games that their gambling increases. And lastly, urge reduction. So when they feel an urge to gamble, they play these social casino games and they report that this then lessens their urge. They report that when they do this, their gambling actually decreases. And this is where we get some of that preliminary support that these games, for some people under some circumstances, may actually help to regulate their gambling behaviors. Now, I would caution here that we don't know for whom this will be beneficial for. You can kind of see that for some, playing these games might be triggering, especially because they look and sound like actual gambling games, and then what happens if they win a jackpot, which is much more likely to happen in a social casino game, would then that enhance the urge to engage in gambling. So while there's preliminary support, I would caution that we still don't know much about for whom these games would be most beneficial as a harm reduction strategy. So some of the future directions. As I mentioned before, this is a really new field. It's growing really fast, but we still need to know more about how these games influence gambling behaviors. And I would caution that migration to gambling is not synonymous with harms. There hasn't been any studies done that really look at what happens to social casino gamers after they migrate to gambling activities. Do they become recreational gamblers? Do some of them then go on to develop disordered gambling? Or do people try gambling? It's like, you know what, this isn't for me. I'm going back to social casino games. And there's a potential aspect for social casino games to lead to harms that are not related to gambling. And this comes from a study, again, done by Sally, who looked at problematic social gaming use and its relationship with the gambling addiction criteria from the ICD. And about 50% of social casino gamers endorse at least one symptom of a video game addiction, and the mood relief, so that coping aspect of it, was the most frequently endorsed of why they use these games. Future directions, I would caution that a lot of our knowledge around social casino games, as we know, are based on self-report, which can be problematic, right? There could be recall biases. People may not be comfortable disclosing how these games may affect gambling behaviors. And so we really need to try to tease out the effects of social casino games using objective measures. And to that end, my colleagues in Australia, we developed a social casino gaming app. You can actually download this from iTunes now if you would like. It's called Lucky Lolly Slots. And the really cool thing about this app is that we have experimenter control. So we can we actually can control every single line you see there, from how much they win, when they win, are they going to win with the cupcakes or not? And that really gives us that control of being able to see what are the structural characteristics of social casino games that may then influence future gambling behaviors. So we just finished a study looking at the jackpots, some of the bonuses, right? The clip that I showed you, you can see how they're really close to hitting that bonus. We wondered whether that can influence people's gambling. And interestingly enough, we found that when those bonuses happen earlier, they're less likely to persist play and then take an opportunity to gamble. When you have that bonus come later on, then that really seems to enhance persistence in playing social casino games and that urge to gamble as well. And we're now starting up a study looking at the payout rates. Social casino games, they pay out roughly around 110%, whereas gambling games pay out at 92%, and this has been one of the factors that are hypothesized to influence migration to gambling. So we're recruiting participants now, having them play this game, and 1/3 will be assigned to the higher payout condition. The 1/3 will be a control, so they essentially don't win or lose any money. And then the loss condition, the 92%, which is the payout rates found in gambling games. And then after that, we're going to give them an opportunity to engage in gambling activities and see who's more likely to then say, you know what, I would like to play a roulette game that we have. And we hypothesize they're likely going to be people that are randomly assigned to the winning condition, that pay route, because they feel like, you know, maybe it's my lucky day or I'm pretty good at this. So why not try the roulette? So having said all that, the conclusions, the social casino games' influence on gambling is not straightforward. It's quite nuanced. For some, it seems to increase gambling. For some, it seems to decrease gambling. And we kind of need to know more research into for whom and for when it may increase and may decrease. And we're starting to find this out now, but I think more work is really needed in this domain. Microtransactions and skill building seems to really increase going to gambling after social casino games and social motives as well, whereas that urge reduction may lead to a decrease in gambling activities. So based on our current knowledge, along with Dr. Wall, Melissa, and Sam, we came up with sort of a pathway model of how exposure to social casino games may increase or decrease gambling. This is by no means a final model, sort of a working model based on what we know. This will change as we have more research and evidence to the influence of social casino games. So exposure to social casino games, no, then if you're not exposed to them, it's really not going to influence your gambling behavior at all. But if you are and you decide to engage in play, then perhaps it's the motives. It's why you're engaging in these games that may really influence whether the social casino games will increase or decrease. And for some have argued that social casino games, if you're influenced them at a young age, it's going to increase because of normalization. But for some adolescents or young adults, it might actually decrease because they may find it boring. And if this is like what gambling is going to be, then why bother? So we really need to tease out some of that, that trajectory of for whom social casino games is going to lead to an increase in gambling, and importantly, problematically, and for whom this may actually be a protective factor. Implications, regulation. Social casino games, because they're more like video games, are not as regulated as much or at all as gambling activities. There are best practices guidelines about social casino games, and there are calls that maybe these games should be regulated under the same terms as gambling games. And part of that is the age verification, right? Social casino games purport to have age verification. When a study in the UK, 300,000 youth age 11 to 16 reported engaging in social casino games in the past week. So a significant number of people who should not be playing these games are playing these games. And likely it's because, you know, the verification is, are you over the age of 18, 19, yes or no? You click yes, here we go. There really isn't any objective way to verify a person's age. And you can also easily lie on Facebook about your age as well if they use that as a verification. And second, microtransactions. Microtransactions seem to be really driving the link between social casino games and online gambling. And if that's the case, then should we limit these advertisements, right? Limited time only, 2 times chip sale, or buy the chips now and you'll have more opportunities to win. Or should we really limit that, or have some sort of messaging that this may then lead to, you're at higher risk than lead to gambling, and this is really just for fun. And thank you for listening, and now if you have any questions, more than happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, Andrew. I got word that my mic was a little bit quiet and fuzzy before, so please send me a note if you're unable to hear me now. But this is your time to ask Andrew some questions. So as I mentioned, there's a raise hand function. on your WebEx Event Center. And if you are unable to find that, just send me a note and I will unmute you. So Sean has a question for you. Go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, hi there. I'm just wondering if you have a link to the best practice guidelines for social casino games.
I don't, but if you send me an email, I'd be more than happy to find that for you.
Oh, that'd be perfect. And then that flow map that you had provided there with like a decision matrix for the motivators around social games and how it leads to gambling. Do you have a copy of that chart that you can kind of extract from your presentation?
Yep, I'm also happy to send that out as well.
That'd be great. My team would love it. You did an excellent job. Thank you very much.
No, thank you.
Thanks, Sean. I have a note from Lisa Jackson, and it says, oh, it faded away. On slide 26, what was the other category of gambling? I believe it was 50%. So maybe you'll have to go back to the slide to be able to get a sense of that.
That's a good question. This was a summary document report, and they just lumped everything else that didn't fall into the casino, slots, bingo, poker, likely things like sports betting maybe, but I'm not quite sure.
Okay.
Sorry, I can't get more help there.
She says, okay, thank you. Does anyone else have a question for Andrew? I'm not getting any chats or raised hands, so maybe we'll just give it one more second. And otherwise, Andrew, are you still comfortable with me sharing your email if people have questions as they sort of think through and look through the slides and things like that?
Yep, and I've also listed my email here. It's hyoun.com@ucalgary.ca. If you have any questions or would like any materials related to the presentation, I'm more than happy to share them. So just send me an email, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can.
Perfect. I think Travis might be raising his hand. Let me check. Travis, are you raising your hand?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. So Andrew, you know, sort of there's a lot of media out there right now about sort of loot boxes as sort of a monetization feature of like these social games and other games. I'm just wondering if you could speak to that at all about, you know, how do these loot boxes work and how might they sort of mimic some of the aspects of gambling in these games?
Yeah, and that's a really great question. Although I focused just on the social casino games, there's now some thought that it might be the social games that may then lead to social casino games and gambling. And what loot boxes are, and for those that may not know what they are, is that for some of the RPG games, the role-playing games, or any games where you kind of level up and you can get items, it's sort of gambling. You can buy or place bets, and it's sort of based on random algorithms, and if your luck is great, you can get a really coveted item, like a really powerful sword or a really powerful armor. And you can see how this really stimulates gambling activities, right? You're betting something of value, money, in the hopes of getting something else of value, in this case, a virtual item. You can see how that can prime young players or players in general to then be sensitized to risking money to get something in return. And that may then lead to playing social casino games or gambling games as well. We're actually running a study that's sort of trying to tease out that social game, social casino game to gambling link. And majority of social casino gamers actually report first playing social games. So they start out on Candy Crush, they start out on Clash of Clans, and then they move on to social casino games. So this was just preliminary analysis, so I don't want to say this is for certainty, but we're looking into that now and hoping to publish it in the near future.
That's great, thank you.
Thanks, Travis. So I'm not seeing any more hands raised. I also would like to remind you, so in addition to having Andrew's email address on these slides, we will send it out. We'll send out a link to the recording when it is posted. When you exit, oh, Catherine wants to know when these slides will be available online. We will try to have the recording slides, all the information to you by the end of the week. when you try to exit the webinar event center, you'll be prompted to complete a very brief evaluation. And then if you would take a few moments to do that, we would be very appreciative. And otherwise, I think we are all done. Anything from you, Andrew, before we wrap up?
No, again, just thank you very much for taking time out of your lunch, and hope this was informative.
Yeah, thank you very much, Andrew. That was a great presentation. And you guys will all be hearing from me with lots of information sometime before the end of the week. Thanks a lot, Andrew.
Okay.